In the 37 seconds that just passed, heart disease claims the life of one adult in the United States. I'm Lacey Stevens with Fit by 50 Plus, and today I want to talk to you just briefly about heart disease, some of the risk factors, and some steps that can be taken to help keep you from becoming a statistic. Certain racial and ethnic groups are more likely to be diagnosed with specific medical conditions. For example, Caucasians are more likely to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, Hispanics with high cholesterol, and African Americans are more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. And all of these are risk factors for heart disease, which is the #1 cause of death in the United States. Now, genetics might play a role, but just because your genes say that you might get this particular condition doesn't mean that you necessarily will. And by the very same token, just because I didn't list your racial group doesn't mean that you're exempt either. I'll use myself as an example. I'm African American, so I am more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. And that's just on the strength of me being black. Now, there are other factors that we don't have any control over that also contribute to heart disease, like your family history and your sex. No, I'm not talking about your sex life, just your sex, male, female. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at my family history. Let's start with my dad's side. If you watched my intro video, you recall that I shared that my dad had a heart attack around age 49 and died of heart disease when he was 52. Well, the official cause of death was arteriosclerotic cardiovascular disease. That was the immediate cause. But diabetes and hypertension were also listed as other significant medical conditions that he suffered from. Now, my dad does have siblings, but I don't believe that any of them had any heart-related or diabetes-related issues, and neither did my grandfather. So we'll just move on to my mom's side. Now, my mom she's really never had any quote-unquote heart-related issues either, but she's always kept an eye on her cholesterol. Now, on my mom's side, her father, my grandfather, suffered not one but 2 heart attacks. He had his second heart attack, unfortunately, proved to be fatal when he was 55 years old. My grandmother also lived with diabetes. My oldest uncle died from a heart attack when he was about 44. My oldest aunt, she had surgery a few years ago to stent, I believe it was 2 arteries that were stented. Another uncle had 5 arteries bypassed about 30 years ago, and about 5 or so years ago he had 2 additional arteries stented. And I have one uncle who has a pacemaker. Now, if I had more room here, I could actually expand this out to show that my great-grandfather, my mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, was a double amputee. And I believe it was around the knees, knee up, amputee, double amputee, due to complications of diabetes. And my grandfather's sister, my great aunt, also died of a heart attack. So when we look at family history, my family history really is pretty significant, especially the further back that you go. Now, I have never had any issues with high blood pressure, diabetes, or obesity, but I've always kept my eye on my cholesterol. I've kept my eye on my cholesterol for years. Despite me, myself, never having been diagnosed with high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, or any heart-related issues other than, keeping my eye on my cholesterol, my younger daughter was actually born with a congenital heart defect called a ventricular septal defect. Is it genetic? When you look at it from this perspective, it almost has to be. But this particular condition, a congenital heart disease, is actually listed as a serious health condition by the CDC relative to COVID-19. So it's very important to make sure that you know your family history. Now, when it comes to sex and heart disease, cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death for African American, Alaska Native, American Indian, Hispanic, and white males in the United States. Wow. Just let that sink in for a minute. Cardiovascular disease is also the second leading cause of death for Alaska Native, American Indian, Asian American, Hispanic, and Pacific Island women in the United States. That is just a mind-boggling statistic. And if that information is not scary enough, according to the American Heart Association, heart disease claims the lives of 1 in 3 women. Wow. I mean, wow. What? Wait a minute. What? Let me make sure I understand this. I'm African American, which means I run a higher risk of being diagnosed with diabetes, high blood pressure, and obesity. You just saw my family history. It's pretty extensive. And I'm also a woman. Oh my goodness. Do you see that little tiny area where all 3 of these circles overlap? That's exactly where I am. I'm in that really small area where all 3 of those issues are a huge concern to me. In addition to all that, by 2035, more than 130 million adults in the United States are projected to have some form of cardiovascular disease. That is about 45% of the population. It's unreal. And when I looked at it, put it all in perspective, and I sat in awe, tried to understand, how does this happen? Why does this happen? And you know what? At this point, it doesn't matter. What I decided that I absolutely positively had to do was figure out how not to become a statistic. I refuse to become a statistic. So regardless of your age, your race, ethnicity, sex, family history, genetics, I want you to refuse to become a statistic too. I know that you can't control your genetics or your family history or sex, but there are steps that you can take to modify other risk factors that lead to heart disease. And one of the ways that you can help to reduce your risk of cardiovascular disease is by first knowing your numbers. You need to know, this is what's called the ABCs of diabetes. You need to know your A1C, which is a test that measures the glucose or the blood sugar in your body. Your blood pressure, and you need to know your cholesterol. We'll get to the S in a minute. It's actually ABC, ABCs of diabetes. But when you know exactly what that A1C is, when you know what your blood pressure is, when you know your cholesterol, not that it's normal. In my intro video, I said that my cholesterol was normal. I can tell you my HDL or my good cholesterol, my LDL or my bad cholesterol, my triglyceride levels, and my total cholesterol. And you have to know those numbers. As a matter of fact, not this last time that I had those numbers checked, but the time before, I was trying to get in touch with my doctor's office because they were supposed to actually take my results and put them in my portal so that I could see them. And for whatever reason, that wasn't happening. So I finally got in touch with one of the nurses, and she said, well, I was just calling to let you know that your test results were normal, which is great. But I said, I need to know exactly what those numbers are, because the normal range for cholesterol is less than 200 for total cholesterol. If I'm at 199, it's still normal. It's dangerously close to 200, but it's still normal. When you know exactly what these numbers are, then it really helps you to decide what, if any, actions need to be taken. So definitely you've got to know the different components of your A1C, your blood pressure, and your cholesterol. And another number that you really need to know, you've got to learn your target heart rate zones. So if you haven't seen my video on heart rate zones, be sure to check out my Peloton ride and the follow-up video, because I go in more detail and talk about the target heart rate zones and how knowing those can help you when you're working to get fit.
Other ways to help reduce your risk, get moving. The American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes of moderate activity per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week, or a combination of the two. And again, there's a little more information in the Peloton ride, that second part where we actually go over the heart rate zones, where we talk about moderate activity and vigorous activity when it comes to the different target zones and what percentage of your capacity you'd be working at for moderate and for vigorous. And with any activity, you definitely need to track. Tracking is going to let you know where you are right then, but it also lets you see your successes. It lets you track your progress. It shows you'll be able to see yourself, that you're getting stronger, that you're getting healthier, you're increasing your stamina. So you have to track that progress. Make sure that you start making healthy food choices. Instead of processed foods, and I know you probably hear this a lot, start opting for the fresher fruits, the fresh fruits and the vegetables. There's one lady who told me, she said, well, when I go to the grocery store, I usually try to stay around the perimeter. And it turned out that at the grocery store that she and her family went to, the fresh fruits and vegetables and the fresh meat, all of that was around the perimeter of the store. And then towards the middle of the store were the more processed foods. And I just thought that was pretty neat the way she said it, I just stay around the perimeter. So if you have those options available, opt for fresh, healthy foods, maybe frozen over canned, but make sure that you are in a position to track the sodium and the cholesterol levels in the food as well. We're talking about heart health. We're talking about high blood pressure. Well, sodium in the foods, the cholesterol in the foods is definitely going to have an impact on those numbers as well. If you need to lose weight, and losing weight, what it really comes down to, there's no magic bullet, no magic pill. What it really comes down to is calories in versus calories out. And the only way to know that is to check. You have to know how many calories your body burns by itself, because your body does it, whether you get up and move around or not. You are burning calories just to blink, to think, to sleep. You're burning calories. You need to know how many calories your body burns. And there is an article on my blog, Fit by 50 Plus, that helps you to calculate that particular rate. Well, when you know the number of calories that you're burning in a day, whether you're exercising or not, then you can take a look at the number of calories that you need to stay under. So if your body burns 1,500 calories a day and you're not doing any exercise or anything, if you eat less than 1,500 calories a day, by definition, over time you're going to lose weight. And there's also a couple of articles there at fitby50plus.com that also address strategies to lose weight as well. I use an app to track my nutrition information. So if you don't know this, there are apps out there that you can just download on your phone. And the foods that you eat now, the fresher foods, you have to go through and actually maybe type in the name of it. If it's apples or bananas, you probably have to type that name in. But other foods, say you've got a package of salmon, there's a barcode on the back. You can scan that. And so many foods, I've only run into a couple of different foods that I have not been able to scan and pull the nutrition information up automatically into the app. And with that, the app will automatically track the amount of sodium that you've had, the number of calories that you've had for the day, carb intake and fat intake and protein. So technology is our friend. And in this case, it is an absolute lifesaver, because I used to actually write this down by hand. I've got notebooks where every day I would write down what I ate, what I drank, the time. And there's an app for that. So definitely take advantage of the technology at hand. If you are in a position where you've decided that you need to lose weight, focus on losing 1 pound at a time. I read an article, I wish I remembered the name of it, but there was a guy who lost, it was like 60 or 70 pounds. And the mindset that he had was, he said, I didn't lose 60 pounds one time. I lost 1 pound 60 times. So lose 1 pound. Lose a pound and celebrate. And lose another pound and celebrate. And just continue that trend. And sooner or later, you'll get to where you want to be. Now, there are other videos coming that will help you to design those strategies and to keep motivated and to stay accountable. So I'm really looking forward to getting more information out there. This is the S. We did the ABCs of diabetes: A1C, blood pressure, and cholesterol. And S is stop smoking. If you're a smoker, stop smoking. My dad smoked. And it was, I have no doubt, part of what led up to his cardiovascular disease. I remember going into the store. This was when kids could go buy cigarettes. 10, 11 years old, going in the store, getting my dad cigarettes. He started smoking early. Maybe it was cool. But when it comes to life and death, you've just got to quit. And I do not expect it to be that easy. I've never had to do it, but I know that it won't be that easy for most people. But when you have that right motivation, it's not about you anymore. It's usually about something bigger than yourself. And at Fit by 50 Plus, we definitely help you to define that motivation, to find those drivers so that you do stay motivated throughout the process. Because you're the only version of you that this world knows, and we need you. There's a poem called the Serenity Prayer, and I believe the author is anonymous. It goes, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We can't control genetics or our family history or the sex that we were born. But I want you to have the courage to change the risk factors that you can. Your A1C, your blood pressure, your cholesterol, your activity levels, increase your physical fitness, your food choices, weight, smoking, stress. We have control over every one of these factors. And if we have control over them, then that means that we've got the power to change them too. And when you make the decision to start changing these risk factors, then you're making a decision to not become a heart disease statistic. And that's exactly what I want for each and every one of you.
So guys, it all comes down to the same thing. I want you to be informed. I want you to be informed about issues that pertain to your health and your wellness. I want you to be intentional. I want you to be intentional about the steps, the strategies that you lay out to get on track or get back on track to living your best life. And above all, I want you to be in good health. So thank you so much, guys, for hanging out with me for a few minutes so that we could, chop it up about heart disease. If the information in this video was helpful to you, or you feel like it might be helpful to someone you know, hit the like button below and be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. And please leave me a comment. I would love to know what you think.